Our churches come in, well, many different sizes, different periods, different condition, but every one of them has a story to tell. Of course, their main purpose is places of worship, but they're also essential parts of the community, and they've been serving the community, some of them, for well over 1,000 years. But a church is more than just a building. It can be a repository of art, craftsmanship, architecture, and certainly history. But I think most importantly, they're all about people past and present. And in June this year, the Diocese of Llandaff is running one of their Churches Unlocked festivals, when many of these churches will be open to visitors. The person who's responsible for this is Sarah Perrins, who's the Church Development Officer. And I'm meeting Sarah and Father Gary Powell at St. Catwg today. Sarah,
hello, Richard.
Good to see you. Lovely to see you. And Gary, thank you so much for opening the church. This is wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
So we're going to take a look at this marvellous church.
Come and see our lovely church. Yeah.
Thank you. Amazing church, Sarah.
It is, isn't it?
No idea this was going to be such a wonderful place. You know, Sarah, I've driven past this church on a number of occasions. Never been inside, but coming in, this is absolutely marvellous. I mean, the spectacle and majesty of this place is astonishing.
It is, isn't it? It's an absolute revelation, and I think this is part of the reason why we put on the Churches Unlocked Festival, is because people don't appreciate what's inside some of these buildings, because they are locked most of the week. It's basically, the festival is one big invitation. So it's an invitation to our congregations to open up these wonderful buildings, but it's also an invitation to visitors of all ages to discover their heritage, because these are churches are almost like what would you say, keepers of community memory, aren't they?
Absolutely right, yeah.
Yes, I mean, some of these buildings have been here for well, perhaps not necessarily the buildings as now, but they've been founded for over 1,000 years, and they've seen war, peace, birth, marriages, death, joy and sorrow. And I think that if we can show people that what we have here is something for them, you know, it's something for them and for the memories that their families have. Not just about memory, it's about the fact that there are living congregations worshipping here, and that they're doing some great work in the community.
Of course it's that. I think that's the wonderful thing about it, that it's easy for people to say, oh, I'm not going to go into the church, it's not for me, that's, you know, and you know, all the kind of restrictions we have in our own minds about them. And this is presumably what your Churches Unlocked is all about.
Yes, absolutely. It's an invitation to everybody to come, and we're hoping to offer something in the festival period, something for everybody, so for all ages. So it's not just about heritage, but it's about things like wildlife discovery days in churchyards, because the churchyards are brilliant places for wildlife and biodiversity, and great places to do, you know, little sort of bug discovery type events, and we've got some of those going on, which would be great for families or anyone else who's interested in that sort of thing. Absolutely right. It's a fascinating subject of study. So how long has the Churches Unlocked Festival been running? We started last year, actually. It was very much an experiment last year, because we were, as you remember, just coming out of the whole COVID experience. Churches had been locked for, well, some churches which were locked anyway were even more locked, if you see what I mean. And we thought, well, let's put on something that will encourage people to open up their churches again, so hence the Churches Unlocked Festival. And last year we focused on 10 churches in our diocese, and we were really thrilled with the success of it, because we had 3,000 visitors to the 10 churches over the period of 10 days. which was great. So this year we thought, right, well, let's expand a bit. So we've invited our friends from Monmouth Diocese to take part as well. So we've got 10 churches from there, 20 from Llandaff Diocese, and so that will be 30 churches over the sort of southeast part of Wales, with a variety of age of church, variety of events, etc. So we're looking forward to it.
Well, I think it's absolutely wonderful. And what are the dates? When can I come and see these churches?
Well, you've definitely got to come between the 3rd of June and the 11th of June. And so both weekends, the churches are guaranteed to be open on Saturdays between 10 and 4, Sundays between 12 and 4. Then some churches will be open in the week for events, but you'll need to look at the website for the full details about what's on and where, because there's so much going on. You need to check it out.
This church is such a good example of what can be found in these places of worship across Wales. And there's so much history crammed into this relatively small space. I just love going around and looking at the memorials in these churches, like this one, for instance, to the Reverend Harris, who was an important figure in the way that this church evolved in the 19th century. When he came here in the 1860s, well, this place was in an alarming state of disrepair. In fact, it was said to be roofless. This is a wonderful Victorian church, Gary, but I guess its origins are much earlier.
Yeah, it's originally a Norman church, but obviously, as you can see, it was heavily restored by the Victorians, and they've certainly left their mark on the place. But the history does go back a lot earlier than that. Yeah.
And what about its name? Who's it dedicated to?
It's dedicated to St Catwg, also known sometimes as St Catwg. Catwg was responsible for establishing the monastery at Llancarvan.
I just love the way these places are interrelated and interlocked together. It's a fascinating bit of our history.
It is. Because he travelled further afield, there's churches dedicated to him in Brittany as well. Like all the early Welsh saints, he travelled around the Celtic lands from Wales down to Cornwall, down to Brittany, and further afield as well, probably.
Spreading the word.
Spreading the word, yeah.
So this church, St Catwg's here in Gelligaer, is part of a deeply significant and historic landscape. This marvellous Gelligaer Common, where you can find Iron Age and Bronze Age burials, a massive Roman fort just alongside, and of course sites of medieval occupation. It's been such a pleasure to see the interior of that absolutely wonderful church, and likewise it's such a pleasure to be here in the open air. But it's also been a terrific privilege to have spent some time with those experts who know so much about the history of that particular place. And I think that's one of the things that excites me about the Churches Unlocked Festival, because it will give us the opportunity to explore a little more about these vitally important places of history and, of course, worship. There's an excellent website about the Churches Unlocked Festival. I've already been checking it out and made a list of my must-see places.